You're listening to The Unsafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown.
He uses us, doesn't he? He relies on weak people, subject to sinning, subject to failing, that have to be empowered by the Holy Spirit to be able to communicate that message. And he has done a marvelous job using us to reach the world. But at this point in the tribulation, the 144,000 no longer have access to television. They no longer have access to radio. They probably are now down to one-on-one evangelism.
God relies on normal, everyday people to spread His message around the world. It's pretty incredible to think about how the gospel started in a very centralized part of the world and is now being spread across the entire globe. We're lucky enough to have the internet, TV, and social media to be able to spread the gospel quickly to people who may have never gotten the chance to hear. Today, Pastor Ken is going to teach you about how God will continue to use His people to spread the gospel even during the end times. Well, let's join Pastor Ken in the book of Revelation, chapter 14, as he continues his message. Now, for a word from our sponsor.
Every time Israel's been invaded, with the exception of Egypt, it always came from the north. So the north to them was a bad, bad place, always. The part of Israel that split off was the northern kingdom, led by the tribe of Dan. And the tribe of Dan were the first ones to be idol worshipers. So it's interesting to note that of all the tribes mentioned that are part of the 144,000, the tribe of Dan is not. And there are some folks who have tried to say, well, that's because the Antichrist comes from Dan. No, Dan was the first to go into idolatry. They were the ones that led the rest of the nation that direction. We even see the beginning of it in the book of Judges. They didn't stay where they were supposed to be after Samson, who was from the tribe of Dan, blew it. They went north. And they grabbed a Levite who was also idol worshiper, and they established their own base of operations up in the north. When the people first took the land, they attacked somebody in the north in the Golan Heights. His name was Og. He was 13 feet tall, little guy. And then, of course, in Genesis 6, we have all those fallen angels that show up on Mount Hermon, which is in the same area in the north, and they have their offspring called Nephilim. The book of Enoch, of course, tells us it's Mount Hermon. And for a Jew, looking at why Jesus did what he did and where he hung out most of the time and why he went to places in the north, he was specifically attacking demonic strongholds and destroying what it was that they had done. Why did he go across the Sea of Galilee to save one guy who was possessed by thousands of demons? Well, he destroyed the demonic presence that was there, and he also destroyed the entire economy of idol worship, as all the pigs that they would sacrifice wound up drowning in the Sea of Galilee. Two-prong hit. The 144,000 is an antitype. It's a reversal of the Watchers. The Watchers came and corrupted man. The 144,000 are part of the removal of that and part of the victory that God is going to have. They're pure. The Watchers defiled themselves. The Watchers corrupted the world to the point that the only way that they could be dealt with is God had to start all over again with 8 people. But the 144,000 are those who God selected from man. They're all Jews. They're 12,000 from each tribe, and they're going to remain pure. The angels that fell did not remain pure. They were supposed to remain pure, but man, who is supposed to have a sin nature, these 144,000 will remain pure, and they'll go through the entire tribulation that way. Now, we also have to remember something that Jesus said in Matthew 24, verses 36 to 39. He tells us that this time period of the end of the age is going to be just like the days of Noah. When the Son of Man comes, it's going to be just like the days of Noah. Well, yeah, there were Nephilim, there were giants, there were all of these. There was sexual confusion going on everywhere. And it's going to be like that as well at the end of the age. In the days of Noah, even to the point of, here's 144,000 to combat the however many it was that came down to Mount Hermon to corrupt man, Well, it's going to be just like that, except it's going to be an antitype of it. The victory of the 144,000, which is prophesied here in Revelation 14, points to the overturning of the corruption of Genesis 6. The watchers failed. God's selected evangelists will succeed. And those who are going through the Great Tribulation need to know that. They need to know that the demon armies, they're going to be taken care of. And if you've in our discussions talking about where did demons come from, well, the book of Enoch again talks about that demons are the spirits of the Nephilim who were destroyed as a result of the flood. They've attacked man. They've killed over 1 billion men, as we've seen in the book of Revelation. And what we see here is a picture at the end of it all, which is what this section of chapter 14 is. God is conqueror, and these 144,000 are still there. Verses 2 and 3 of chapter 14. I heard a voice from heaven, like the sound of many waters. I love how John wants to tell us how loud this was. And he starts pulling words out of Ezekiel, and he starts pulling words out of other places to talk about how loud this is. He says, the voice is like the sound of many waters. It's like the sound of loud thunder. The voice I heard was like the sound of harpists on their harps. Sounds like loud, booming, but also unusual, if you want to look at it that way. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders. And no one could learn this song except 144,000. This is a song that only 144,000 people will ever sing. They're the ones who are going to know it. They're going to know the words. John's giving us a prophetic picture. He's looking 3.5 years in the future from the point that we've just been talking about. And he sees the 145,000 with the Lamb, and he hears music coming from heaven that they're going to turn around and sing back. Now, in the Scriptures, we only see that 9 times there's a new song. Just 9 times. This is one of the 9 times that there's a new song. Each one speaks of a glorious theme specific to the singer of each song. So, if you want to look them up, I've got them there for you. Psalm 33:3, 43, 96:1. There's one in Isaiah as well. One of the new songs we've already heard, that was in Revelation 5:9. Those were the ones under the throne. So this is another new song. This is the last new song on this occasion. There's going to be one other song that we're going to see in the book of Revelation, but it's the Song of Moses. It's not a new song. It's a repeat of a golden oldie from the book of Exodus. Okay? But what is heard and what they're talking about, John, it's very loud. It's a song sung by the redeemed. Remember the last time we heard him sing? Everybody heard? I mean, everybody heard. Everybody in creation heard. We talked about that. It's melodic. Sound of harpists harping. It's not cacophony. It's not just sound for the purpose of sound. So John gives us all this stuff to tell us it's loud. It's like being at a rock concert with the volume turned up high and the speakers aren't splitting and the sound doesn't stop. And he uses the same language that Ezekiel used. Remember when Ezekiel talked about the cherubims back in Ezekiel chapter 1? And he says it was the sound of many waters. It's descriptive. It becomes a sound that people always say, well, you're talking about the Lord. When you talk about the sound of many waters, you're talking about the Lord, right? Yeah. So the 144,000 have come through the tribulation. They've been delivered through all of it. They've seen their friends and people they've reached out with to the Lord. They've seen those who have been rejected, killed. They've seen those who have given their life to the Lord, killed. They've probably seen the concentration camps and the murder machines. They've probably seen all of it. If there's a group of people that should be suffering from PTSD, it's these 144,000. But instead, the Lord's taken care of them, and they're singing worship music to the Lord as a result of what they've gone through. And nobody else can say they've gone through what they've gone through. They're a special group. They're not the church, but they are the first fruits of saved Israel. Millennial saved Israel. They're the first fruits of that. As it says in verse 4 of Revelation 14, these are the ones who have not been defiled with women. You wouldn't believe the number of commentaries I've read that try to, oh, no, that's not what that means. They're men. They haven't been married. They have not. God's not saying sex is bad. He's saying for these 144,000, they have a specific situation going on and a specific mission, and God said, you've got to do this, and they did. They followed the Lamb wherever he goes, period. And they are purchased from among men as the first fruits to God and to the Lamb. In other words, they're the first Jews who will give their life to the Lord coming out of the period of time after the rapture going into the millennium. They're the first ones. They're male Jewish evangelists from every tribe except Dan. They are the first fruits of the harvest of the Jewish harvest that's going to come through the Great Tribulation. And there are more who are going to make it. Stop and think about it. We talk about how crazy the world is today. Okay, Christians are gone. Have been for at least 3.5, 4, could be as long as 40 years. We don't know. The world has gone mad. Satan's lies have been accepted as truth, and there is confused sexuality like you won't believe. Okay? I mean, the picture we see today is nothing compared to what it's going to be like during the tribulation. Attention is specifically drawn to 144,000 young men who did not listen to the culture. They rejected the culture and stayed wholly to what God had called them to do. And they do so for 7 years. To also include the confusion of the last few years of the tribulation, the Great Tribulation. Jesus talked about it in Luke 17, 26 to 30. Just as it happened in the days of Noah, so it'll be in the days of the Son of Man. They were eating, they were drinking, they were marrying. Life goes on. They were being given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. It was the same as happened in the days of Lot. They were eating, they were drinking, they were buying, they were selling, and they were planting, they were building, and they were also confused and were trying to do things that they shouldn't be doing. But on the day that Lot went out from Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. And it says it's going to be the same on that day that the Son of Man is revealed. That's what we're talking about here. This is, we talk about everything's getting bad. It's going to get worse. And when the restrainer is removed, the Holy Spirit, from the church, when the church is taken out of the planet Earth, it's going to get much worse. Now, why did not the Lord allow these young men to get married? Paul talked about the same situation back in 1 Corinthians. There was this persecution going on. And there were people, believers, who were showing up in the Colosseum on a regular basis being killed. And in Corinth, they were being killed. And Paul, in 1 Corinthians 7, verses 25 to 28, talks about it. He says, "Now concerning virgins, I have no command of the Lord, but I give an opinion as one who by the mercy of the Lord is trustworthy. I think then it's good in view of the present distress, that it's good for a man to remain as he is." In other words, look, you don't know if you're going to live tomorrow. You don't know if you're going to have to reject Caesar worship and not put a pinch of incense and say, Caesar is Lord, and then you're going to wind up being killed tomorrow. He says, "Are you bound to a wife? Don't seek to be released. Or released from a wife, do not seek one. But if you marry, you've not sinned. And if a virgin marries, she's not sinned. Yet, you're going to have trouble in this life, and I'm trying to spare you." He's not talking about marriage as a whole, that you're going to have trouble, okay? He's talking about that specific situation. Please don't come up and say, "You said that." No, I didn't, okay? He's talking about that specific situation that was going on in Corinth, which was going on, it later goes on throughout all of Rome. The 144,000 evangelists that we're talking about here in Revelation 14 did not get sucked into the culture prior to their commissioning, nor during the time period of their service. They have remained pure, and they remained on mission the entire time. As it says in verses 4 and 5 of Revelation 14, these are the ones who have not been defiled with women. They've kept themselves chaste. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. And for some of those guys, that may have been an interesting journey. You have no idea where they may be preaching the word. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They've been purchased from among men as first fruits to God and to the Lamb. and no lie was found in their mouths. They're blameless. Again, the church is not here, the church of the firstborn. We're the elders. We're there. And the millennial sheep and goats judgment hasn't taken place yet. This is probably prior to that. So you got 144,000. The Lord's basically saying, hey, we made it. And it's a photo op with the 144,000. That's kind of what I look at it as. So on whatever is going to replace CNN after Jesus takes over, you're going to see a picture of all 144,000 with the Lord. That's kind of what John's saying. He's saying that. They came alive. They're the first fruits. They're the ones who are going to go into the millennium. They're the first group, the first fruits of the Jews who are going to go into the millennium. There'll be more. We still have the sheep and goats judgment to take place. But we've got that. In a time of lies. Remember we talked about that last week? All of the lies that the false prophet's going to give. And the beast, lie all the time. These guys never lie. They shoot straight all the time. All the time. Remember what it says in 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 8 to 10, that when the lawless one will be revealed, who the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth, and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming, that is the one whose coming is in accord with the activity of Satan, we just talked about in the last several weeks, with all power and signs and false wonders, and with all deception of wickedness for those who perish. The big words, lie, deception, false. We talked about that. The veracity, the truthfulness of these first fruits of the 144,000 is a fulfillment of Zephaniah 3, chapter 3, verse 13. The remnant of Israel will do no wrong and tell no lies. There you go. Nor will a deceitful tongue be found in their mouths. This is the first of that group, the 144,000. They are an answer to that prophecy from Zephaniah. They will feed and lie down with no one to make them tremble. God's going to take care of them. So this large number have been kept utterly clean during the tribulation. And they're the first fruits of those. There are others. This is just the evangelists who were marked by the Lord. Now, moving on in chapter 14, we're going to see that there's some angels that are going to give us some words. Now, every time I use the word angel, everybody starts thinking, oh, yeah, guy with wings. Okay. Angel is a job description. Okay? It means messenger. Does not necessarily mean he has wings. Remember, when in the Old Testament we saw that some of them were snake-like. They were called seraphim. We had cherubim, who are not naked flying babies, but are multidimensional with 4 faces, and you don't want to cross them. We also see that there's the angel of the Lord, who is the pre-incarnate Christ, who one evening after dinner killed 144,000 folks who were around the nation of Israel, specifically Jerusalem, and they all went home. The Assyrians did as a result of it. So this is a job description. Angel, messenger, okay? So John is going to show us 3 messengers who are literally performing that duty. We're going to meet 6 of them, actually. Each has a distinctive, specific meaning. We're going to get 3 of them. Verses 6 and 7 of chapter 14. And I saw another angel. And I like how John has seen so many angels at this point. He just wants you to know, it's not anyone I've seen yet, okay? I don't know their names. They're not wearing name tags. Hi, my name's Isaac. We don't know who they are, okay? He's just saying, I saw another one who's like all the others, but not the same. Okay, it's another angel, a different guy. This one's got red hair. The other one had, we don't know. But he's flying around in mid-heaven. Now, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, that there are 3 heavens. The first heaven, which is around earth, the mid-heaven, which is above that, and then the third heaven, which is where the Lord lives, based on the way that the Jew would understand cosmology. This angel is in mid-heaven, so he can't be reached by Satan and his minions. It's basically he's flying around doing that while he's not really, but I mean, you feel like he might be. They can't get there to him. They can't stop him. And he's flying around in mid-heaven having an eternal gospel to preach to those who live on the earth. There's that operative word, live on the earth. And to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. And he said with a loud voice, "Fear God, give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made the heaven, the earth, the sea, the springs, and the springs of water." Now, does God do that right now? He uses us, doesn't he? He relies on weak people, subject to sinning, subject to failing, that have to be empowered by the Holy Spirit to be able to communicate that message. And he has done a marvelous job using us to reach the world. But at this point in the tribulation, the 144,000 no longer have access to television. They no longer have access to radio. They probably are now down to one-on-one evangelism. That's all that's left. And if the population of the planet is just a little bit around 2 to 3 billion, that means each one of the 144,000 has a personal group that they have to reach of about 15,000 people. So that's a large group. They're going to be busy. But it makes you wonder, why couldn't God done that from the beginning? Just have an angel circle around and say, "Hey, accept me or else." Now, Dr. Ryrie sees that, and he says, "Oh, the only reason this is happening because he says the 144,000 have been removed from planet Earth and they're with the Lord." I don't see that. I think we went forward and we went backwards. So this is not the only way they can get the message as angels. But what we've seen throughout the Scriptures is that when there's an extraordinary situation that takes place, God at times will do extraordinary things to communicate his message. For example, an elderly gentleman walking through his field, taking care of his sheep, and he sees a bush burning that doesn't burn up. And he goes and he finds out that bush talks to him. Okay, that's a little different. A guy who's treading out grapes in a place where you're not supposed to be treading out grapes, you're supposed to be doing wheat there, or no, he's doing wheat where you're doing the grapes, okay? His name's Gideon. And the Spirit of the Lord shows up and talks to him. God does this over and over and over again. By the way, he's doing that today, too. There is a group of people today that are very hard to reach with the gospel. I mean, not that we're not trying. We're doing radio. We're doing internet. They're blocking internet. They're blocking radio. I've been in one of the countries there, and they actively block the radio frequency that Trans World Radio uses to try and communicate the gospel in Arabic into that nation. So what's God doing, since it seems like everything that we try to do gets stopped? In the book Dreams and Visions, which talks about the fact that Jesus is currently using dreams, visions, and anything possible to reach Muslims because nothing else is working. We get a hint of what's going to be going on during the tribulation, I think. About a decade ago, this is a group from folks who work with Muslim outreach, they said they started to hear something new in the world of Islam. God was opening the closed hearts of Muslims by giving them spectacular dreams and visions. At first, the stories were rare. But today, the amazing accounts of God breaking through to Muslims has become a common occurrence. We have found that 1 out of every 3 Muslim background believers has had a dream or a vision prior to their salvation experience. Some are more precise and a bit more conservative, but somewhere between 25% to 35% of Muslims who are coming to Christ see a vision of Jesus Christ first. And then they try to find out who he is from that point.
We're so glad you tuned into today's edition of the Unsafe Bible with Pastor Ken. For more information about this ministry and what we believe, you can find all you need to know at theunsafebible.com. Want to hear more messages from Revelation? We've got that too. Just look under the Media tab. As you've been listening to this teaching in Revelation, what are some of the things that come to mind? What are some of the questions that might be sprouting up in you about God and his ways of doing things? One thing that's a proven fact is that the things that are prophesied about in the Bible most assuredly come about. This may be comforting to you in many regards, but when you read Revelation, it's kind of terrifying to think about. Wouldn't it be nice to be unaffected by all the terror that's talked about in Revelation? Well, God in His goodness allows for a way out. Would you like to know more about this escape from the end of the world as we know it? We'd love to connect with you about these things. The truth is, it's all about Jesus and believing that He's Savior and Lord. If you have more questions, please go to theunsafebible.com. Find the Connect tab and select I'm New to fill out the form so we can be in touch. If you want any more info on who we are and what we're about, you'll find that on our website as well. That's theunsafebible.com. Well, that's all for today. We hope you'll join us again for another edition in the Book of Revelation. Pastor Ken will continue to share some great thoughts next time on The Unsafe Bible.